In the vast expanse of the galaxy, there was a place where the brightest minds of countless species came together to learn. The Interstellar University of Unified Knowledge. This academic sanctuary welcomed students from all corners of the cosmos, from the serene water-dwellers of Hithar to the feathered scholars of Vorten. Among them was Alex, a human, one of the so-called Deathworlders. Humans, hailing from a planet categorized as a Class 5 Deathworld, were both admired and feared. Earth was infamous for its chaotic ecosystems, extreme weather, and an unnerving variety of dangerous creatures. To many aliens, humans were living legends of survival, though the tales often bordered on the absurd. Alex had adjusted well to the alien environment, though the sterile, controlled atmosphere of the university felt oddly restrictive compared to Earth. His peers, despite their curiosity, kept a cautious distance, whispering stories about his species' alleged ability to wrestle apex predators and thrive in conditions that would kill most life forms. One quiet morning, Professor Kixtel, a meticulous insectoid being with a chitinous exoskeleton, addressed the class. Today, the professor announced in a rhythmic, clicking voice, "We begin our exploration of planetary ecosystems. Each of you will present an aspect of your home world's biodiversity, a unique feature, organism, or interaction that defines your planet's ecological identity." There was a murmur of excitement and anxiety among the students. The amphibious Ehrlich spoke about phosphorescent fungi from its swampy homeworld. A crystalline being named Terran described living symbiotic clouds. When it was Alex's turn, he leaned back, grinning. "I'll bring live samples," he said casually. The room fell silent. Professor Kixtel's antennae twitched. "Live samples?" "Yeah," Alex replied. "Just a few harmless creatures. They'll give everyone a better understanding of Earth's biodiversity." The word harmless hung in the air like a storm cloud. Whispers erupted. The winged Vrenyi students fluttered nervously, while the plant-like Zoltan wilted ever so slightly. "You're certain this is safe?" asked the professor, clearly regretting the question the moment it left his mandibles. Alex nodded confidently. "Totally. They're small and contained. Trust me, they'll be a hit." The class ended in a haze of uncertainty. The aliens, accustomed to carefully regulated environments, found the idea of wild animals deeply unsettling. Even those from relatively hazardous planets couldn't fathom willingly bringing such creatures into a learning space. As Alex left the classroom, he could hear hushed voices speculating. What could he possibly bring? "I heard Earth creatures are venomous. What if they escape?" Alex couldn't help but chuckle at their reactions. Humans had a knack for making the extraordinary seem ordinary, and he was determined to show his peers that Earth's biodiversity wasn't just dangerous. It was breathtaking. The professor, meanwhile, made a mental note to reinforce the university's containment protocols, just in case. After all, with Deathworlders, one could never be too cautious. The day of the presentation arrived, and the classroom buzzed with nervous energy. The students had gathered early, eager yet apprehensive about what Alex, the human, would unveil. Conversations about Earth's dangers had reached fever pitch, with some aliens genuinely questioning if the university's insurance covered Deathworlder incidents. Alex entered the room, carrying a medium-sized containment box with reinforced transparent sides. Inside, faint movements could be seen, accompanied by soft rustling and the occasional chirp. The sound alone was enough to make several students shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Is that alive?" asked Vrenyi, its translucent wings fluttering anxiously. "Of course," Alex replied with a grin. "But don't worry, everything in here is completely harmless." That assurance did little to ease the tension. Professor Kixtel stood at the front, his mandibles clicking nervously as he gestured for Alex to begin. "Proceed with caution," the professor said, his usually commanding voice tinged with trepidation. Alex set the box on the central display table and carefully opened the first compartment. Out slithered a sleek, gentle ball python, its glossy scales shimmering under the classroom lights. Gasps echoed around the room. The reptilian alien, Strix, visibly recoiled, its own scales bristling in instinctive alarm. "This," Alex began, "is a ball python. It's a constrictor snake, But don't worry. It's non-venomous and completely docile. They're popular pets on Earth. Pet? Repeated Strix, aghast. You keep predators in your homes? Alex chuckled. Not predators, just animals. This little guy helps control rodent populations. They're quite peaceful if you respect them. The next reveal was a sugar glider, which Alex gently lifted from its compartment. The tiny marsupial blinked its large, dark eyes and stretched its membrane-like gliding skin, eliciting a chorus of startled chirps from the audience. It's adorable, one of the winged Vrenyi admitted, despite hovering near the ceiling in nervous reflex. This is a sugar glider, Alex explained. They're small, social creatures that glide between trees in search of food. They thrive in groups and are incredibly friendly when they trust you. The sugar glider leaped onto Alex's arm, gliding smoothly to his shoulder. The aliens watched, torn between amazement and unease, as Alex continued to calmly handle the creature. Finally, Alex reached for the last compartment. Now, this one's a bit of a showstopper, he said, his grin widening. He lifted a large tarantula from its container, its furry legs delicately grasping his hand. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Half the class flinched backward, while an arachnid-like alien tilted its head, strangely intrigued. This is a tarantula. They look intimidating, but most species are harmless to humans. They're shy creatures that play a crucial role in pest control. The class was frozen, their collective fear battling against growing curiosity. One student finally asked, "And what if it gets loose?" Alex smirked. Then we see who panics first. The mixture of dread, fascination, and reluctant admiration painted every alien face as Alex gently returned the tarantula to its enclosure. The room was electric with tension, yet for the first time, some of the aliens seemed to reconsider their view of Earth's creatures, and the humans who lived among them. The presentation was going smoothly until it wasn't. The sugar glider, perched on Alex's shoulder, suddenly launched itself into the air. The small marsupial glided gracefully but unpredictably, landing on a Vrenyi student. The alien froze, its wings stiff with shock, and let out a high-pitched trill. "It's okay. It's okay," Alex reassured, moving quickly to retrieve the glider. But the moment he stepped forward, the Vrenyi bolted upward, its instincts taking over. With the sugar glider now clinging to its back, the scene turned chaotic. Other students ducked as the panicked Vrenyi careened around the room, narrowly missing light fixtures. At the same time, the ball python, sensing the vibrations from all the commotion, decided to explore. It slithered off the table and toward the edge of the professor's podium. Strix, the reptilian student, let out a sharp hiss of alarm. "It's moving! It's moving!" Alex spotted the snake and calmly crouched to intercept it. "Relax, it's just curious," he said, his voice steady as he gently scooped the python back into his hands. But the aliens were far from relaxed. A crystalline student fainted, their iridescent form dimming momentarily as they collapsed onto their chair. Things escalated further when the tarantula, seemingly inspired by the chaos, began climbing out of its enclosure. Its long legs gripped the sides of the container as it made its way upward. An arachnid-like alien, initially intrigued, now emitted a low, warbling sound of distress. "It's loose! It's loose!" Alex turned just in time to see the tarantula reach the edge of the box. He moved swiftly, placing the ball python back into its compartment and reaching out to gently guide the tarantula back down. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the cacophony around him. Meanwhile, the professor was clicking his mandibles in rapid succession, a clear sign of agitation. "Mr. Alex, this is highly irregular," he exclaimed, his antennae quivering. "Welcome to Earth life," Alex replied with a grin, carefully securing the tarantula back in its enclosure. The sugar glider finally dismounted from the Vrenyi, gliding back toward Alex and landing gracefully on his arm. The Vrenyi descended shakily, muttering about needing a week to recover. As the immediate chaos settled, Alex addressed the class, his tone light but firm. "This is why humans emphasize understanding and respect when dealing with animals. We learn their behaviors, their needs, and their boundaries. It's not about control. It's about coexistence. The room was still buzzing with tension, but a few students were visibly intrigued. The arachnid alien tentatively raised one of its appendages. You handle them so effortlessly. Is that typical for your kind? Alex shrugged. It's not just about being brave. It's about knowing that fear fades when you replace it with knowledge. Though the class was far from calm, the initial shock was beginning to wear off. Amid the lingering nervousness, there was also a growing sense of respect. These creatures, once seen as terrifying, were starting to appear fascinating, and so was the Deathworlder who had brought them. As the classroom finally settled, a heavy silence filled the air. The sugar glider nestled comfortably on Alex's shoulder, the ball python coiled safely in its container, and the tarantula rested back inside its enclosure. The chaos had subsided, but the atmosphere was charged with something new, an unspoken reverence. Professor Kixtel took a moment to recompose himself, his antennae still trembling slightly. That was certainly one of the more memorable presentations we've had, he said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been nervous humor. Alex smiled. That's the thing about Earth life. It's unpredictable, but it's also full of wonder. The crystalline student, who had recovered from their fainting spell, raised a shimmering appendage. Your creatures, they don't just survive. They seem to thrive in conditions we would find unbearable. How is that possible? It's not just the creatures, Alex replied. It's the environment. Earth is chaotic, sure, but that chaos creates resilience. Life there doesn't just adapt, it flourishes. And humans? We grew up alongside it, learning to coexist with all its unpredictability. The arachnid alien leaned forward, its initial fear replaced by fascination. So you bond with these creatures? Despite the risks they pose? Exactly, Alex said. We don't see them as threats, at least not all the time. We see them as part of the bigger picture. Each one has a role, and when you understand that role, you stop being afraid. The Vrenyi, still trembling slightly, hesitated before speaking. Your gliding creature. It was terrifying, but also graceful. I've never seen anything like it. Alex gently stroked the sugar glider, which responded with a soft chirp. They're beautiful, aren't they? That's the thing about Earth's wildlife. For all its danger, it's also filled with moments of pure awe. And when you take the time to see that, the fear starts to fade. Professor Kixtel's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Your presentation, while unconventional, has provided valuable insight. It seems Deathworlders do not merely endure their world's challenges. They embrace them, even finding ways to coexist with what others would deem unmanageable. Alex nodded. It's not just about survival. It's about connection. We've learned to work with the chaos, to respect it, and even to find beauty in it. That's something humans bring to the table. A willingness to embrace the wild, not just tame it. The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence was contemplative. Aliens who had been paralyzed with fear moments ago now looked at the enclosures with something akin to admiration. As Alex began packing up the animals, an amphibious student murmured, "Perhaps we've misunderstood Deathworlders. Your kind doesn't just endure danger. You thrive alongside it." Alex looked up, a small smile on his face. That's the thing about humans. We don't just survive. We find a way to live. As he left the classroom, carrying the containment box, the students remained seated, their usual chatter replaced by thoughtful silence. In their minds, they weren't just marveling at Earth's creatures anymore. They were marveling at the humans who lived among them.